Okay. I just want to say some final things about the technology essay, Heidegger's question concerning technology. I want to walk you through his line of argumentation again and just give you the sort of upshot of the whole thing so we can transition from the question concerning technology essay to the essay called The Origin of the Work of Art. Now, the technology essay is actually after the artwork essay. Technology essay is written in the 40s. The artwork essay is in the 30s, but the technology essay really gives the diagnosis of the problem. If you recall, I've been thinking of the course in terms of the diagnosis of a problem and the cure, whereas the art essay written before actually gives the cure. So the problem is technology, namely the nihilism within the metaphysics of technology, the nihilism within the metaphysics of modern technology, which we said very simply is Nietzschean will to power, scientific reductionism, or what Heidegger is going to call the Gestalt. Okay, so the essay begins, and again, I'll just be very brief. It begins with what the essence of modern technology is, what the essence of technology is. And he says, what's technology just in general? So he's doing a kind of phenomenology. And he says, okay, what's technology? Let's just think about technology. Well, technology is an instrument, right? But what's an instrument? What does it mean to use something as an instrument? Well, it means to affect it. That is, to be a kind of cause, right? And so then, so he starts off technology, instrument. What's an instrument? An instrument is a kind of cause. And he goes into, well, what's a cause really? And then he goes back into Aristotle's four causes, right? The material cause, the teleological cause, the formal cause, and the efficient cause. And he says, well, what do we mean when we say we cause something? And it's one of those things in philosophy that you think you know what you're talking about. It's kind of like the way Augustine says time is. Time is something you know exactly what it is until you try to think about it. Same thing with the philosophical notion of cause. What does it mean to cause something? Heidegger says, well, when you think about what a cause is, and you think about the way things are linked in a causal sequence or nexus, you think in terms of mechanistic causality. That's the dominant mode of technology. You think in terms of motion and moving and pushing. But what if we think of technology in the originary Greek sense as a kind of revelation, or what he calls a poiesis, a bringing forth into appearance? When something causes something else, it actually illuminates it in a certain way. So when he's thinking about technology as a cause, he's thinking about technology as a kind of illumination or a perspective or revelation or interpretation of being. So when he's talking about the essence of modern technology, he's thinking about the way in which things show themselves under this kind of umbrella interpretation and perspective of technology. So technology is a mode of revealing, a mode of truthing, aletheia. Remember, aletheia for Heidegger means disclosure or revelation or unconcealment. So the essence of modern technology is an instrument is a cause, and a cause is a kind of way in which things show themselves. It's a perspective. It's an interpretation of being. That's what a cause is. So when we think of things in terms of causes, when we say, this is the cause of that, now he's thinking in the German sense too, of cause in terms of Grund, right? When we think in terms of cause, we think in terms of explanation. When we know the cause of something, Aristotle says this in Metaphysics 1:1, when we have knowledge of something, we know the cause, right? And he's thinking of when we know the cause of something, we actually understand it. But what does it mean to understand it? We see it in a certain light. We see it in a certain perspective. We see it in a certain kind of interpretation. Now, the interesting thing about the essence of modern technology as an interpretation of being, as a revelation of being, which are the same thing, both objective and subject, as a perspective of being, is that modern science and technology's perspective on being, or metaphysics of being, or interpretation of being, is an interpretation that crowds out other modes of interpretation. So it's an interpretation with a definite article. It says, this is the interpretation of things, or this is the perspective on things, or this is the meaning of things. And that is, as we said, nihilistic, because it reduces the meaning of being to one meaning. So the essence of modern technology is a way in which things show themselves, right? A perspective on the world, or a perspective of being, because this is an objective perspectivalism, if you remember, as opposed to Nietzsche's subjective perspectivalism. It's an interpretation of being. It's a perspective on being that we don't even realize we have, and it's one that crowds out other modes of interpreting. So it's a reductionistic interpretation, and that's what he means by Gestalt.